moved it around. Welcome to our weekly team chat, all on bone health and bone density. So I posted an Instagram story a couple hours before this with some statistics where women after the age of 40-ish, somewhere between then and menopause, will lose about 20% of their bone density if the proper measures are not taken. And we're going to go into what those are. And then women make up 70% of all hip fractures. And when you zoom out and you look at all of the hip fractures, one in two of them, you will not return to your function and your quality of life previously. This is where a lot of people end up with live-in aids or moving into nursing homes. And 30% of elderly people who break their hip within the first year pass away due to infection, being sedentary, other metabolic diseases popping up due to the sedentary things. But the good news is you're part of LadyTheFUp, and living the LadyTheFUp lifestyle puts you at such an advantage for maximizing your bone density. And I'll let Deb share a little bit more.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing I want to make really clear is the myth is that osteoporosis is a disease and condition for older women. That's absolutely untrue. In fact, men can get osteoporosis as well, and so can younger women, even as young as into their 20s because or younger if there's a pre-existing health condition, but it really does come about as a result of your life. So what's really important to take into consideration is that your bones are constantly remodeling. It's living tissue. Bone is living tissue that continuously breaks down and rebuilds itself. And this process slows with age. So the faster that a bone breaks down and remodels is better. But as we get older, the remodeling takes a lot longer, and making bone maintenance crucial is what we need to start doing after the age of 35 because we really hit our peak bone mass in our 20s and 30s. I think a lot of people don't realize that bone loss is very gradual and early prevention is key. So if you have daughters and sons that are prepubescent, they should be, it's not just about their nutrition, but obviously, but also getting them to be laying down lots of bone because you can, like I said, you peak in your 20s and 30s. So if you have a very active, athletic kid, it's acting like a bone bank for them. Both Lexi and I are former gymnasts. I was an elite gymnast as well, national level, but not international, whereas Lexi was an international world champ. And even though gymnastics screwed up my knees, it has kept my bones so strong that I've gone for two bone density tests because of my age being 60, that both technicians went, wait a minute, is that really, you were born in 1965? And I go, yep. They go, what do you do? And they said, you have so much muscle density. And that that's as a result of all my years. So it's never too late to turn it around. A fun fact is that our bones are as strong or actually stronger than steel, but they're also very lightweight and porous. So that's what makes them very susceptible to fractures. Weightlifting is one of the best things that we can do, as well as hiking and walking. And what was I going to say? Okay, God, this is like what happens when you're 60. I should have made notes.
If your
Um,
knees are healthy enough to take it, running, sprint work, things like
yes,
split
thank
squats
you.
or jumping jacks as
Jumping,
well.
yes.
But Also, mini trampoline. I know I've gotten a lot of people, yourself included, Deb, on the mini trampoline kick the past 6 months. Jumping, that impact without the intense impact on the joints because the trampoline bed kind of absorbs it a little bit, but that impact technically is pounding your bones every single time that you jump. So if you have iffy knees and you're like, don't really run, don't really like, I'm not into jumping, start small. Like maybe even do like one jumping jack or a like one-legged sort of jumping jack modification. You don't need to go really hard or intense, but pounding your bones, even when you are older, is going to help this so much.
It does. Uh, Something else that people don't realize is that we're always focused in because of the material, the education that comes out, wrists and spine and hips. But what we don't pay attention to is also that bone loss can happen in the jaw. And as you get older, if you're going to not have healthy jaw bones in your jaw, your gums and your teeth are going to not have a good foundation to hold on to, and you can lose it. My mother has been underweight her whole life. She comes from a family where they all had their stomach stapled. So she went the other way. And the reason why I share this is because she was the woman that when we would go out to eat, she would just have boiling water. That's it. Like she had anorexia her whole life. She now has been on chemotherapy every week for the last 20 years. She is so brittle and so tiny that they've said to her, she probably will die with the disease that she has, but she will die from osteoporosis. And she's losing her teeth. And this is really like, I said to her, you didn't know that osteoporosis affects your mouth too? And she was like, I had no idea. So I don't think a lot of people know that. So it's not just our wrists and our spine and our hips. Um, but you know, it's also really important to take into consideration too that your bones are so helpful for our overall health because they act as mineral banks. So when your nutrition isn't the way it should be, like making sure that you're eating whole foods, getting enough protein, getting enough collagen, getting enough essential fatty acids. It's not just calcium and magnesium. In fact, too much calcium can actually be a detriment to your bones. It actually has the opposite effect and can actually land into your arteries and cause heart problems if you have high cholesterol. So, why it's really good to keep these bones strong for your nutrition and your overall health is because if you're missing certain minerals, your body will get them from your bones. But think about that over time. If you have a crappy diet and you're eating processed foods and you're not taking care of yourself, then you're accelerating your bone loss, even if you're walking and doing everything right. So the nutrition side of it isn't just about making sure that you're getting enough calcium. You have to really pay attention to the protein. And then the last thing I just want to just say again about this excess calcium, you know, do not supplement with calcium unless unless you've been told to by a medical professional. There are ways that you can easily get it through your diet without having to have dairy. It's so easy. And if you start taking a calcium supplement outside of what is in a multivitamin, or if your doctor has said take a CalMag, you know, a calcium magnesium mix, that's fine. But if you just go, oh, I need to get 1,500 milligrams of calcium, I'm gonna take at least 1,000 milligrams in a supplement, it can actually cause the opposite effect. And if you're not taking enough vitamin K2, then your calcium's just going to end up in your soft tissue rather than being directed to your bones. And also vitamin D3. You know, not everybody will get enough vitamin D3 from the sun. So that's something that I do say to supplement with, and take good care of your gut health, because that's your microbiome actually has a say in how healthy your bones are.
It also determines how much of everything that you are absorbing nutrient wise. So when we think of calcium, because we do need calcium through what we're consuming, digestion is going to pull that out of your intestines. If your gut health is off, all absorption is off. So if you've ever had blood work and you're like, oh, you're deficient in iron or B12, something up with your digestion. Very, very likely, especially if you're hitting the level of protein that your coach wants you to. So it absorbs that, and then it's going to store it in the bone if the body detects, okay, we have enough where we need to. Our bone storage isn't fully topped up. Let's put it in there. But also, whenever you contract your muscles, calcium is required for muscle contractions. Okay, so when we're thinking of all the systems in the body, you have your respiratory system, you have your cardiovascular system, you have your musculoskeletal system. Musculoskeletal, muscle bone. Okay, so that is one system that works together, where when your muscles contract, it requires calcium to contract those muscles. And when all of these things are happening, like the muscles are communicating with the bones, and the bones are communicating with the muscles back and forth. So in that system, like it's derived from the same type of stem cell. So kind of think of it like cousins-ish, where they're part of the same ecosystem. And when your muscles release protein, that signals to the bone specific things of like, hey, we're being challenged. We need to store more calcium. And then when the bones are releasing specific things, that's also talking to the muscles. And there's one main protein that the bones release that I want you to kind of keep in your head, osteocalcin. Okay, so osteo, bones, calcin, calcium-ish. Okay, so just kind of think of it that way if it helps you remember it. So osteocalcin is something that acts as a hormone, and it talks to the whole body. Okay, so it gets released, it goes through your bloodstream, it hits the brain. It is a messenger that has a neural protective effect. Okay, so it keeps your brain healthy as well. It is important for insulin sensitivity. So if you've heard insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity, kind of opposite ends of the scale. We want to be more insulin sensitive and less insulin resistant. So it promotes insulin sensitivity and healthy blood sugar regulation. Okay. Part of this as well, we've heard of Alzheimer's before. So Deb talked about teeth and jaw. Alzheimer's is known now in the medical industry. They call it like type 3 diabetes because it is the brain's inability to utilize glucose as a fuel storage or a fuel system, meaning you're essentially diabetic in your brain and your brain cannot run off of it, which causes all of these cognitive issues. So, osteocalcin, the more of it that you have from your bones releasing it, the better your memory and your cognition will be as well. So, muscles, bones, very, very important to also keep your brain healthy.
Right. So the issue that older women face, that with perimenopause and then menopause, and younger women that have been put into chemical menopause through either drugs or having to have a hysterectomy and not being able to keep their ovaries, is that estrogen plays a huge role as a protective mechanism for your bones as well. So if you're, you know, if you're considering doing hormone replacement therapy, it's not just for hot flashes and, night sweats and squirrely brain and all the other things. It also actually has a very protective mechanism on your bones, which, as Lexi said, those earlier, that the statistics are really frightening, that, after the age of 60, your risk of an actual hip fracture goes right up if you have not been taking care of yourself. And something that's, I think is very sad is that they used to say that if you were really overweight, like if you were obese, then the pull of gravity on the weight of your body on the bones made sure that you had good bone density. But they've now proven that is not true. That is actually the opposite. So most people that are in that category of body composition do not have a good bone structure if they're, especially if they're not exercising, because they did not, typically they did not get that way by eating the proper way, and the body is then, missing minerals, so it's dragging them from the bones. So it's, it's another reason why to get your body composition into a healthier range, just as a result of doing your resistance training and eating properly. The three minerals too that I didn't mention that are really important as well are boron, silica, and zinc. And you can get, you do not have to supplement these. Boron is found in foods like your prunes, raisins, and almonds. Zinc is shellfish, beans, and nuts, and silica is found in your oats, bananas, and cucumbers. So if you look at what your very first meal plan looked like, chances are you had these foods on there. I do have to tell you a funny little story quickly. Today, I was talking with one of the male coaches. I won't say who. And we were talking about, his health. And I said, "How are you feeling?" "I'm getting better. He's been sick for so long." And I said, "Do you take zinc regularly?" He goes, "I do now." And I go, "Oh, for your immunity?" He goes, "No. Did you know that zinc helps with free testosterone?" And I said, "Yes, it does." And he goes, "Is that why, like they say, oysters are an aphrodisiac?" And I said, "Yes, because zinc does help with testosterone, which helps your libido." I said, a long time ago, I used to write for this magazine called Balance, and I wrote an article that said, "Not tonight, honey. I'm low in zinc." So he was just like, I had no idea. And I was thinking, oh, to be young again, to not have this useless information flying around. So zinc is very important. So if you're taking zinc, I do take it every day anyways. Um, because I'm not a prune or raisin eater. I don't like those things, but I do eat almonds. And then I do eat shellfish, but if, there's a lot of dietary restrictions for people either with intolerances or religious observances that you can't have shellfish. So you can get it in your beans and nuts, and then the silica in oats and bananas and cucumbers.
One of the things that you said there, oh, my brain just had a brain fire.
Too young. You're too young.
It's the calorie deficit and the
Yeah,
the
it's
depletion right
crushing.
now. When you said that estrogen is really important to preserve bone health. So when remember that the bones are giving and taking and they're taking calcium and they're being like, here, body, you can have some. Estrogen is really important for the uptake into the bones of storing that calcium in it. And when estrogen starts to decline in perimenopause and menopause, that is when the body is still giving a bunch because the body's like, hello, we need some calcium. Hey, bones, you got some? And they're like, yes, here. But because there isn't enough estrogen to say, hey, we're bones, we need some, give us some, the balance is off. And another time in one's life where this might be the case is if you are breastfeeding. So if you are a breastfeeding mother, if you are not on top of consuming adequate calcium within the first 6 months of breastfeeding, you can also lose about 20% of your bone density in 6 months. Now, that can come back again if you are having adequate calcium in your diet and prioritizing all of the minerals that Deb just talked about. But you need to be mindful of that because if you don't, now you have 20% less overall in your 30s or 40s or however old you are when you are breastfeeding. Multiply that by however many children that you have had that you are breastfeeding, and that can also put you at risk for either osteopenia or osteoporosis way before perimenopause or menopause even comes up.
It's true. You know how we recommend taking collagen peptides. A lot of my clients were like, "What's with this collagen peptides? Like, why can't I just take protein powder?" And I go, "Well, you can, but if you're on dairy free, then it's not advisable." But the good thing about collagen peptides is, and prunes too, really help with bone reabsorption. So as the bone is breaking down, and it's breaking because it has to break down in your body. Instead of your body just excreting it, if you have enough collagen and you're consuming natural, prunes or the collagen peptides and adequate protein, like if don't hear me saying you've got to take collagen peptides. Just some women can't hit their protein without the peptides.
And
So
they're delicious. So there's that
they
too.
are. Yeah, exactly. So feel good that you're going, wow, I'm not just hitting my protein for my muscles, but I'm also helping my bones with bone reabsorption. So again, what I was talking about as we get older, that breakdown and buildup slows down as we get older. You want your body to reabsorb as much as it can because it takes it takes the load off the body. The body will always prioritize what it needs to do. And what it needs to do is pump your heart, inflate your lungs, keep your brain going. So when you're malnourished and not taking care of yourself, this is why some women have troubles with their reproductive systems and lose their period, or because the body says no, you're underweight, you're not healthy. There's really no, it can't sustain a good pregnancy. The osteoporosis or the osteopenia before you get to the osteoporosis is because the body's going, you know what? We're using the calcium. Your heart, every time it contracts, is using calcium. Just like every time it goes into resting phase and your muscle is using magnesium. So that's another reason why we recommend you take magnesium at night, because 9 out of 10 people are magnesium deficient because you just can't eat enough. And again, like Lexi said, what's your absorption like? As a celiac, my absorption sucks. So um, I'm always trying to stay on top of everything, and I think I do a pretty good job. But so just remember that the body is always going to prioritize what's important, and your body doesn't see bones as important,
Yep.
unfortunately, or muscle, which is unfortunate because they are extremely important
And
for quality of life.
when those are healthy, everything else is so much healthier too. Now, we talked about osteopenia and osteoporosis, like what is the difference there? So, if we are thinking the equivalent of what diabetes would be, you have diabetes and pre-diabetes. So, osteopenia is like the pre-osteoporosis. However, osteopenia, still not good. Still means you are headed in a unhealthy direction. But what kind of differentiates this is the way to determine your bone density is to get a DEXA scan. If you've never gotten a DEXA scan done before, you can get one done. You can go to your physician and say, I would like a DEXA scan. You can also potentially just pay a private company for one. I've done that before to be like, I get it because I want to know my body fat percentage and how much lean muscle mass. But like for me, the bone density is an extra thing. But I'm like, oh yeah, not a problem because again, as Deb mentioned, gymnastics history, our bone density is really, really high. But what you get in a DEXA scan is something called a T-score, and you want it to be positive. But if it's 0 to -1, that's osteopenia. Anything that is below -2.5 is osteoporosis, and that is where you're going to see a 250% increase in the risk of fractures. So if you were to trip on a step and fall, and just like put your hand out or whatever it is, fall down the stairs, miss a step, you are 250% more likely to break your hip or break your wrist if you have that osteoporosis. So if you want to know, ask your physician to get a DEXA scan, see what that T-score reading is for you.
So the other thing that we haven't talked about, because we've been talking about very like important things to do, like with the weight training and nutrition. The other side to healthy living and quality of life is really managing your stress, because the stress hormone cortisol actually reduces bone formation because it inhibits those osteoblasts that I was talking about. Those are what's responsible for building the and remodeling bone. And high cortisol, which, forget about belly fat and all that other stuff, this increases bone breakdown because it stimulates the osteoclast. So for bone to break down, which it should be, the body releases something called an osteoclast. Well, cortisol increases the osteoclast and inhibits the osteoblasts that build. So think build, blast, cast, you know, is the one that's breaking down. And then this leads to bone thinning, which is the osteopenia. And you don't just break bones when you have osteoporosis. You can have fractures and hairline fractures
I've
when you
broken many wrists and toes before.
yeah. And also something to take into consideration that chronic stress reduces calcium absorption in the gut. And this increases calcium excretion through your urine. So being stressed out, like, even just saying it, I'm so stressed out. Like we have to actually look at our body in terms of systems, like Lexi said, because everything, it's like an orchestra. If you went to go listen to the Toronto Symphony Orchestra and you're sitting in Roy Thompson Hall and the strings were out of balance, like the strings were just shit, the song would not sound as good. Every time they stopped, it would be okay. But as soon as they came in to play because the strings were out, no good. Your body is the same. So you can have a great body composition. You can be super cardiovascular fit. You can eat great. But if your skeleton system is still not where it should be, and just because you're lean and looking muscular doesn't mean that you don't have it's called the silent killer because a lot of people don't even know they have it. There are no warning signs. There is no pain until you have the fracture. So it's really important that you're doing everything you can. And the great thing about aging is that they send you for bone density tests. So, but if you're young, they don't want to waste the money on that, which is too bad. And then the last thing I do want to say is that your magnesium is really, really important for your calcium metabolism. Okay, so if you're stressed out, I'm still on the stress talk. If you're stressed out, start taking magnesium. Talk to your coach if you're not,
Twice
like
a day. Not just
yeah,
at night, one in the morning, one at night.
absolutely. It the thought that magnesium in the morning is going to make you sleepy, I wish. No.
There's also many different types of magnesium. So I know
Mm,
a lot of people lean into magnesium citrate or like natural calm, that powder stuff that you add into your water and it makes it taste good and it's fizzy. That is more of a digestion stimulating laxative magnesium than it is the
yeah,
beneficial magnesium that you want. So if you have magnesium, after this call, go read the label. You want it to be either magnesium biglycinate, magnesium glycinate, or magnesium threonate. Okay. Glycinate or threonate, those are good. Those are the ones you want to continue with. Citrate, I don't know if you're backed up and a little bit constipated and need to get things moving before bed occasionally, but that should not be your primary source of magnesium.
right.
Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to type them in the chat or take yourself off of mute. When we look at this group, there's 12 of us on right now, I think. Um, the statistic is 1 in 2 women will have an osteoporosis related fracture in their lifetime. However, hopefully in this group, we're that 50% that isn't because we're doing all the right things. But if you think of how many women do you know in your life? How many women are in your family? 1 in 2 women will have a fracture related to osteoporosis. Might be a wrist, might be an ankle, could be a hip. But this is where we need to lean into what we can do. And if you are questioning, am I genetically at risk for it? Think about your parents. Did your parents shrink as they got older? Because losing height is a sign of vertebrae compressing, which is related to osteoporosis. So if you had relatives that got shorter and shorter and shorter, it's in your genes, and you need to put extra effort into everything that we talked about to set yourself up for success moving forward. And this, again, isn't something that you just have to worry about when you're in perimenopause or menopause. This starts in your 20s, in your 30s. If you have daughters, make sure that they are out running and jumping and they're eating enough food. They should not be in a calorie deficit as a child or a teenager, I understand body image and everyone wanting to stay lean, but it's so important to set us up for success. But if you are like, I didn't have that childhood growing up, it is never too late to start. There have been studies and research showing the athletes out there that are like 70 and 80 running and still active and lifting weights, they have solid bone density. So this isn't a, there's nothing I can do about it. You have so much control and you have so much choice in this. It's just something that needs to be consciously top of mind consistently. But once you put those habits into play, and that's how you eat, and that's the fitness regime that you follow in your life, it just becomes part of who you are, and it's not something you have to worry about.
It it's a fallacy to think that you can't turn it around, you know? Anna to everybody, what's Anna saying?
She was the 1 in 2 statistic. She fell over and snapped her finger completely, and it got caught in the waistband.
Oh
Ooh.
my gosh.
Well, Anna, you're doing a great job at turning your lifestyle around and
Yes.
building your bone density. And oh, yeah, that does not sound fun.
No, and they will, like, bone density tests will do show, like, you, I mean, some people have to go on medication. There is a medication, Fosamax, and if you have to go on a medication, do not be foolish and say, no, I want to do it the natural way. Take it.
Yep.
Take it, because it's actually a very good drug, and it doesn't mean maybe that you have to be on it forever. But I have clients that didn't that started with me in their late 50s because of the osteopenia, and the doctor has said, no, you have to be on Fosamax, it's just too dangerous. Like Lexi said, you could trip and fall and that's it. you know you've got fractures. So but it's never too late. It can turn around and you can increase your bone density.
Yep. It does not have to end being like, oh, I'm a woman. It's going to be fractures and frailty when I'm old. Nah, we can
Oh,
be the badass elderly women that are like elbowing people out of the way and super independent, carrying all of our groceries. And you showing up to the Lady the F Up process day in and day out, even if you're not perfect, it's the consistency that matters. You're on the right track.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm in that demographic now that's considered senior, elderly. I'm laughing because it makes me laugh. Like, when did this happen? Have I been asleep like Snow White and I just woke up? Like, that's what I feel like. I feel like I've been asleep and I woke up on January 4th this year and they go, surprise, you're 60. And I was like, ah, I mean, I know it's just a number and everything, but whenever I read the statistics, it's always 55 and older, 55 and older. And I'm like, okay, like I've got to, I can't just talk about pushing my butt out and showing my muscles. It's about my health too. And that's if anybody on here, well, I know there's a couple of you on here that are younger than I am because I coach you. Um, just remember, like, getting older is not a sentence that you have to accept things. And don't, if you have mothers still alive, make sure that they're doing something. It's too late for my mom, unfortunately. But
I I got my mom resistance training starting 2 months ago, and it's just so awesome because she used to be super active and then kind of fell out of it with lifestyle and stress and work, and she got into the gym, and it's been awesome to see her change in the past 2.5 months. And like we're 10 weeks into the year, and she's already seeing positive improvement. So you can be a positive impact on people. Deb, you are absolutely a positive impact and inspiration to this community, and just like demonstrating to all of us what we can do and what is possible 55 plus, 60 plus. So thank you for being an incredible role model. And when I grow up, I
thank
want to
you.
be Deb.
And I get 20% off on Thursdays at Shoppers Drug Mart now.
Woo!
So,
For those
yep,
magnesium and vitamin D, calcium
exactly.
supplements in the can. Yeah.
Jamie goes, we're out of vitamins. Can't go. Gotta wait till Thursday.
I love it. All right, ladies, final call for questions. Otherwise, just want to say thank you very much for hopping on tonight. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out at any point. If you are watching the replay, feel free to reply or DM us on Instagram. We are always here to help, especially if you want specifics, being like, what foods did you say are really high in boron again, or whatever it is. We're here to help, but also the internet has great suggestions. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Anna. And thank you, everyone else who is here. We'll see you next week. Bye.